But while all this vision is wonderful, without the experience that Paul prays for in chapter 3, we really won't know building. In Paul's prayer, we actually see how God builds. He does it by working himself into us. Once again, we're presented with a concept that seems totally contrary to much Bible teaching today. Bible teaching focuses on the individual, how to succeed, and how to become a better Christian. But Paul presents something different. In Philippians, he uses the words, that I may gain Christ. Instead of talking about a more successful or better Christian, Paul talks about gaining Christ. What's the difference? One focuses on me, and the other focuses on Christ. One focuses on me and my self-improvement, but the other focuses on how God builds the church, which is to work himself into us. From our perspective, it's our pursuit to gain Christ. From God's perspective, it's to work Christ into us. Gaining Christ means that I have more and more Christ, and God working himself into me means that he is more and more in me and preeminent. Let's look at the main items of the prayer in Ephesians 3. He says, For this cause I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit into the inner man, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and depth and height, and to know the love of Christ which passes knowledge, that you may be filled unto all the fullness of God. Now unto him who is able to do exceeding abundantly above what we ask and think, according to the power that works in us, unto him be glory in the church by Jesus Christ, throughout all ages, world without end. First, the prayer focuses on being strengthened with might by his Spirit into the inner man. And then it talks about Christ dwelling, and some translations say making his home in our hearts. Then it talks about apprehending with all the saints the breadth, length, and depth, and height, to know the love of Christ which passes knowledge, and to be filled unto all the fullness of God. I fell in love with this prayer many, many years ago, and at that time I saw that there is a love of Christ that passes individual knowledge. I'm not strong enough to know it by myself. It has to be known with others. And yet I've found that because our focus as Christians is so self-oriented, this experience seems rare. I've had a few pockets in my Christian life with other believers where we've had some measure of this kind of experience, but it's amazing how the enemy attacks it. And if the vision is not clear to begin with, we won't understand the nature of the attack, what God was doing, or even what's at stake. So some of us have had experience of being built up together with others in love and having something of the fullness of God coming in through that experience, and yet have lost it due to strife or someone taking control or someone being exalted and changing the focus from Christ to something else. And no one even realized why the presence of God was lost because they didn't know what was right to begin with. At the end, people thought, oh well, we had a situation that was nice for a little bit and we had love and could really sense God with us. Now we don't. And they move on thinking that it was a nice little season, but not seeing it in the context of God's eternal purpose and the war that's being waged. But if we keep coming to the Word and keep letting especially the epistles educate us, God can equip us to actually stand and know what we're standing for. So this prayer talks about a result, knowing God together, not just individually, laying hold of God in a way that's bigger and more solid than what an individual can do, and to collectively be filled unto all the fullness of God. He's talking about a group of people, specifically the church in Ephesus, not just the theoretical church as a whole. And as I said, Paul's concept is gaining Christ and God working himself into us, which are two aspects of the same thing, God's building work. Where do we see this in this prayer?